Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for the end of the Sunday, or the 3 days in a row of classics racing in sunny Belgium. We've got the Gent-Wevelgem men and women's recaps. We're going to do the Volta a Catalunya recap in the weekly show tomorrow. Just save that because that was maybe the best race of the day. But in Belgium, Mads Pedersen, Little Trek, monster teams, all team lining up. No Pogacar, no Van Aert, no Van der Poel. Trek were clearly the strongest team, but it was also an opportunity for other teams to get a result, like Alpecin with Phillips and Quickstep with Merlier and Visma Lease Bike, who've had a horrendous classics campaign so far, with Olav Koy or Matteo Jorgensen, who got added to the team. So the weather, Benji, I feel like this is always the case.
Mm-hmm.
There was not really much hype for echelons, and then I checked the forecast. I saw we did it on the preview. I was like 25 k's an hour cross tail into Muren, guaranteed.
Yes, indeed. That's exactly the same thoughts I had when it comes to the echelons before today. But I gotta say, I was kind of like, I was trying to downplay my hype a little bit towards the race, because you never know what might happen. But there's a breaker up the road. This breakaway exists, but we get to the Muren. And in the Muren, it's actually surprisingly calm at the start. Now, we gotta remember here, we're doing this based on a ticker on that website, some news on that website. We've got Luke with Race Radio in his ear, just like last week, basically. But we basically have very limited information, and the ones we do have, we're not sure if it's actually correct. But we do hear rumblings of some stuff happening as we near the second half of the Muren, which I thought, okay, they'll clash into the Muren and we'll see splits immediately, right? Apparently it happened in the second half of the Muren, which was kind of surprising. A late split that caused 5-ish echelons across the peloton. So basically 5 groups that split out of the peloton. And it was Little Trek that pulled the race apart. And they were present at the front with 4 or 5-ish riders, I would say. Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe also with 5-ish riders. Merlier was in the group, but his team was not in the group. So we've got an odd dynamic there where Quickstep might not be pacing in the second group. The main team that missed the boat was Alpecin De Koning, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah, De Koning weren't there. We saw Jorgensen wasn't there. Bora had Pithy in there. But yeah, we were trying to piece together what the echelons were from like Twitter videos and La Race Radio. So I think it was obvious then that the wind wasn't crazy. It wasn't Luca Paolini, Geraint Thomas going into the ditch crazy wind. But it was strong enough that if a very strong team like Little Trek wanted to split it, they could create splits. But you had to really go for it. It didn't just happen by default. So yeah, unfortunately, Benji, this happens every time. There is, I don't know why the Muren isn't televised. I feel like we missed the best part of the race today. Even if it's locally recorded, I wish they'd publish it, because it'd be great to give like whichever ruler did it props.
And I don't understand, because I do see then images show up on Sporza, for example, of a helicopter view in the Muren, a picture of it. So I would guess then, okay, they must have had footage in the Muren. And if that's the case, then why don't we see it? There's probably cost involved, etc. But with Gent-Wevelgem, it's so worth it, you know? Like that additional, what is it? Half an hour? 45 minutes?
Yeah, it's like the Muren, if it's going to happen there with the crosswinds, that's where it's going to happen. And when, as Benji said, when coverage started, you basically saw the groups coming back together. So it came back together. There were still riders who suffered. There's domestiques that have suffered. It's definitely, you feel it in the legs. You know, not to be uncharitable, but like the really pure lead-up men who aren't the biggest, who aren't like specialist classics riders, like Jonas Rickard, Dan McClay, they got one bullet. One bullet, and it's spent. They're gone. They come back, and then basically, the next time there's an acceleration, their race is over.
And like you said, groups come together. That's the first 2-ish groups that were split in that initial echelons. There's still a few groups behind, including Arnaud Delis, so during these echelons, I've already said it, we're trying to piece information from everywhere. So also from, for example, a Twitter account of Visma Lease Bike posting a video by the side of the road of what the echelons looked like. It looked at that point that Arnaud Delis was just behind the first echelon, but then he shows up when the footage starts, not behind the first, not behind the second, but in the third echelon, which doesn't come back. So Arnold is completely out of the race from this point. And like, what do we have to say about the Lee anymore right now? Because like, if he can't make those echelons, there is something wrong. And what is wrong? I don't know. Now, news articles are starting to blame the fact that he wasn't with his cows enough in the off season. I'm not sure that's the thing to blame.
I thought the cows gave him some sort of virus, or he got a tick virus, Lyme's disease last year from them.
Yeah, correct.
Whoa.
Well, I don't know if that was correct, but that's the rumor that last year. That's the news that came out last year. But I feel like I felt like there was pressure, and that was the reason. But it can't just all be pressure, you know? There has to be a physical reason behind it, no?
Yeah, I mean, he's literally pulling out. He's like in the correct echelon. He's in correct position, and it's like not on, and he's like pulling out of the line when there's, miscellaneous journeyman rouleurs who are holding the wheel just fine. That clearly indicates something's wrong with his shape. And it's also, you can botch a sprint at the end. You can mentally be out of it in positioning in a hectic sprint finish. This is also like not a mental issue, I wouldn't say either. At that point, it just looks physical. He just doesn't have the shape at the moment, and probably Gent-Wevelgem's not where you're going to find it. So just before the hill zone, we think, okay, Trek have stopped. They're going to reload their bullets. They're going to just wait, and Mads Pedersen hammers coming on the Camel, and then they get numbers over the top. That's what I was thinking was going to happen. McClay does a full lead out with Van der Sande, and then Jorgensen goes to the front. I'm like, what's going on here? And then Little Trek and Visma fully try to split it. Bora had tried to try it a little bit before, but it looked like mostly just tailwind. Here it does split again, and it splits properly. Half the peloton gone. Philipsen and Merlier were off the back. No one really paced. Then everyone's like, oh, Trek are all here. Koi's here. Pithy maybe's here. Mayos here. And they just stop again.
And like we're running into the hill zone pretty soon, so maybe they were thinking, okay, if Merlier and Philipsen drop at this point, maybe it's their legs and maybe they won't get over the hill zone, but you can't assume that either. So I was kind of expecting maybe a Visma to keep going after their move to keep the likes of Philipsen and Merlier behind, but then again, Little Trek with Milan is there, so would Little Trek want that to continue? They pulled also in the echelon, but then the question then is, what are their plans for the rest of the climbs? And we do see that. I will get to that in a second. I first want to talk about something completely different. And first of all, mention Philipsen and Merlier do come back because no one pulls. But we go into a certain corner. It's a left-hand corner. And we see the peloton, or what's left of the peloton at that point, going into that corner. But on the left side, we see one rider, a Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe rider, jumping on the pavement. Some spectators have to move out of the way. It's not like they moved out of the way just in front of him, but like 10 meters in front of him, they had to move out of the way because he was riding into their trajectory. And by hopping on the pavement, he basically dive bombs the corner. And in doing so, caused a crash of 4 or 5 riders. Jordi Meus, what do you think?
I think it's a disqualification because it's the hopping on the footpath. It's not like he's just taking an inside line on the road. He's hopped on the footpath and he's never making it. He's never making it. Like when I saw the speed differential when you watch it in full speed, I was like, what the fuck? And then, crashes guys and like bangs into them when they're obviously going to be there in the apex. So yes, some riders touch wheels ahead of them. They were almost holding it up, I think, Milano and one other. So yeah, I think it's I don't see it that different to what Masiuk did. Maybe it's like at slower speeds, not as big a crash, but it's functionally the same. Hopped on a footpath, ducked back in, out of control, crashed them guys.
For me, multiple things. First of all, I want to say that my first thought was yellow card, but then I saw that he hopped on the pavement and that people had to get out of the way on the pavement for him to dive bomb in the first place. And if we then take the rules, on paper, he should get a yellow card for endangering spectators on a pavement and a yellow card for the actual move itself. And if you combine that, it is 2 yellow cards in a single race, which is by law a disqualification. So based on that, I also agree it's a disqualification, at the least a yellow card, but I lean towards disqualification. But on top of that, I need to vent. I'm sorry. I've heard so many people talk about Matichuk and Matichuk here and Matichuk there. So if you don't remember, in RVV a couple of years ago, Matichuk was one of many riders that decided to hop off the road to the left on like, it's like, for example, if you got a big road, You can go onto houses. What is that? When you park your car in a house, what do you call that?
A driveway.
A driveway. You've got driveways.
Yeah, the curbs onto the driveways, yeah.
So the riders in the peloton hop on the curb. Maybe the curb is even on the same height of the road, but they hop onto the curb to move up past certain riders to move up in the peloton. We see Matichuk doing that in that RVV, like many riders did before him. For example, Tim Wellens. And the mistake is that Matichuk does not have the skill or attention to get back onto the road in time. In so doing, riding into the grass and crashing into the peloton. So my issue with everybody bringing this up is that Matichuk was a scapegoat. He made this move. There were severe consequences for his move. It was on one of the biggest races of the year. And if it wasn't a combination of these three things, he would never have gotten a multi-month suspension like he did. And if there weren't severe consequences for riders that in the crash, he would have never had that multi-month suspension. And the proof is simple. In the same year or just after that year, we see Lorena Wiebes doing the exact same thing in Brugge de Panne or Gent-Wevelgem. And she crashed an entire group of people, including Lotte Kopecky, and she gets no consequences. Not even a fine or anything in that race. So the amount of people that comment and react to it impacted the decision of the UECI in that moment. My solution is fairly simple. Matichuk was a scapegoat because there were severe consequences. We always complain that you shouldn't just penalize riders on the consequences. Why is there no penalty on the action of going off the road to try and pass people? Because if you don't penalize the action, you will never disincentivize riders from not doing it in the first place. And if riders aren't doing it in the first place, then you won't have the severe consequences that you have to create a scapegoat in Matichuk for. That's my take.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it even in Dauphiné uphill when Lipovitz, like people make mistakes.
Paris, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Paris, sorry. People also make mistakes, and they're exacerbated when you come off the road and then back onto it. But yeah, there was a crash. Luckily, it seems that everyone was okay. They got back on. Mason himself included came back in, and then we saw actually a strange move from Visma that they haven't been doing this year. There was an anticipation, Amy de Gent and Casper Pedersen style before the hill zone starts. Was it Holman Benji or Jacobs?
Johan Jacobs.
Because there's like a rotating cast of also like Scandinavian or Northern European rouleurs that Movistar and FDJ like to sign, especially Movistar. They're like, they don't speak Spanish. They're like 1.90 meters. We got to have some of them in. Actually, Hessman.
Respect Johan. I'm going to try and get him to teach me how to not fall over in cyclocross by the end of the year.
So he's better than Holman.
We need to be on his good side by the end of the year.
Anyway, they anticipate Campenaerts goes with him. It's probably smart because he's going to get shelled on the actual climbs, and the peloton completely stops. So it's interesting because like if you made that move, you can then ride at tempo and it's fine. But if you didn't, you caught up behind Kemmelberg. Pithy launches it. Johan Jacobs and Campenaerts gets the breakaway. I guess like a minute 30. Breakaway which had Oliveira and Co in it and Haller. Breakaway is always the right place to be if you can be in it in these classics. Haller was in. And then, Pithy smashes Pedersen's there. A group forms with a couple of treks. Pedersen, it's going nowhere. Milan looked pretty suspect on the first Kemmel. In fact, all the sprinters, Milan, Merlier, and Coy looked rat shit on the first Kemmel, except Philipsen. Philipsen looked class, but the other sprinters looked pretty suspect on the first Kemmel. And it all comes back together. And then we have the Plugstraat. So then in between the first Kemmel and the second Kemmel, we have like a 30k flat zone, which includes some like gravelly, not cobbles, not a sealed road.
It's gravel.
It's gravel, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know why they call it Plugstraat. I mean, it's gravel. And we see Pedersen. Oh yeah, why?
I think they were called Plugsteerts because they were next to fields. Because you'd have a plug, which is like a plow, in the field next to you while you're walking on the street, which is the street. That's the vibe I'm going for.
And the sloot is the gutter in between them, right?
Yeah, but sloot is a bit too Dutch for my liking. We're Flemish people here. Come on.
What do you call them?
I don't even know anymore. The gracht.
The gracht.
Yeah.
I thought Kracht was strength.
Kracht with a K.
Kracht is strength. And what's your one?
Kracht with a G.
Oh, come off it. And on the Plugstrasse, we see Mads Pedersen absolutely smash. He goes to the front and he's with Arjen Levens. No? He's with Arjen Levens, who I don't know if he'd been in a break. No, I think he just made it. Olav Koy and Jasper Philipsen. So Pedersen, two sprinters, and Arjen Levens, who, by the way, was very well positioned in E3 all the way into the Tyenberg. He looks really, really good this year. It wasn't Janne Berkmos. And we see Pedersen's there, and we're like, this is a race. Kampenarts is ahead with the breakaway. Trek have sprinters Milan behind, and Sturven and Kirsch. Alperson don't have very good strength in depth. Merlier's not got, he's got a problem.
Philipsen's with them on paper right now. So
Philipsen's with them, but he has to be. He has to be because his team's not very good right now.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that race disintegrates before our eyes. Philipsen punctures about 30 seconds after following the move. Gone. Koy, it then changes back to Pedersen on screen, and we see Koy just near the Kracht, sitting on the verge. He's not punctured like Pedersen. He's sitting down, and when they're sitting down, they've broken something.
Yeah.
And so Koy's out of the race. There's no images of the crash, so we don't know what happened. I don't know how he's crashed, especially as he was just following Pedersen and also crashed so badly to Braceland that he's out. And now Pedersen's basically got a great situation. He's defended behind, and he can go across to the break.
Great situation because you do lose Koy, which means that Kampenarts won't ride once you catch him, and you lose Philipsen, which means that if Philipsen gets back to the peloton, Alpecin will start chasing behind you. So it actually negatively impacts him a little bit. But
Philipsen can follow you and beat you.
Yes, that's a problem. I agree with you on that. But it negatively impacts the dynamic a little bit as well with Koy, I would say. So scenario is as followed: Pedersen, Arjen Levens. Because, we got to talk about Arjen Levens for a little bit.
He's 65 kg, right?
It's ridiculous. I swear when this guy showed up for the first time, I don't know, 5 years ago, when I was playing Pro Cycling Manager, the man was a little bit of a puncher type that showed up in the hills. Was he riding for Wallenie Bruxelles or something, or am I inventing that in my head?
He's a journeyman.
I swear.
He's 30 years old.
Yeah, he's been all over the place. Verandas Willems, Roompot, Beat Cycling, Paul Sausen, VL Technics Experts, I think that's a cycling club. And after Bingo, Wallenie Bruxelles, he went to Lotto, I'm pretty sure. But he seemed like, I don't know, I felt like he was kind of a Lawrence Huis type back in the day, but he completely changed in that, where he actually performs really well on cobbles and on flat. You mentioned this to me. The Tyenberg run-in, where was he?
He's P2 with Janne Berkmos. They're both about 62 kilos, zero help. They stay there the whole time in the sprint run-in, positioning-wise. So he's a positioning god. Levens had a magic race today. I mean, his Palmares this year, it's really good, but it doesn't even show how good he probably has been. And Benji, if he'd been paired, this guy needs to be paired with a good form Arnaud Delis. If he's paired with a good classic sprinter, that's where this guy could really shine. 17th Omloop, 25th San Remo, 23rd E3. And today's following Pedersen. Crazy. Pedersen gets across to the breakaway. The breakaway gets split up a little bit on the next Kemmelberg. 60 Ks to go. Kampenarts attacks. Pedersen counters. It looks like they're following him. It looks like basically it's going to be Kampenarts, Haller, Levens are going to go with Pedersen, and then they're going to work to the next, the last Kemmelberg, Ossuer. That doesn't happen. Pedersen leaves them behind. He had a 3-second gap. Doesn't wait for them. They're stuck in the middle, and they just start bleeding time to him. And to be honest, I think Pedersen wins this race in so many different ways today. Actually, I think he wins if Koy and Philipsen go with him. I think he wins. Yep. I think he probably wins easier, actually, if he keeps those guys with him from the breakaway. Because he would just drop them on the final Kemmelberg anyway. And he chose the hardest option, and he goes clear there. Back in the peloton, people are smashing, and then before the last Kemmelberg, no one starts pacing.
honestly, with 60 to 55 kilometers to go,
Over.
we looked at each other in like text, and we said to each other, "This race is completely over." And the reason is the following. First of all, you pointed out, if you have domestiques before the last camelback, the ossuaire, and you don't use them, you're going to lose them on that climb. Because someone will try and smash it in that group, because they're like, oh, I'm so far behind, I need to try something right now. And that's exactly what happens right there with Philipsen as well, who wants to show, okay, this is how good I was and would have been if I was at the front. And he smashes that ossuaire, and it's split up again. And like the gap at that point is 1 minute 40, 1 minute 30, whatever, goes up to 1 minute 57 or so in total when it comes to the maximum. And then you look after the climb, and first of all, when it's split apart because of it being thrown apart, it's going to come back together. You know that's going to happen, but when it comes back together, there's a few teams that do start working. Credits to Jono X with Abrahamsen and Tiller. Credits to Alpecin, who put every single... Oh, go ahead.
But this is post-camel now.
Yeah.
But the race is where Benji's saying pre-camel. Pedersen gets 45 seconds, I would say, for free, more or less, where it's blocked up. There's even Alexis Brunel, who'd been in the early break, jumping on the Monteberg or the Barneberg.
Respect.
All the same shit. And then, and here's why it happens. So Visma, they got Campenaerts ahead, and they have no sprinter anymore. So they just got to hope that somehow the Campenaerts group stays away and you can fight for second or third. Yeah. But there's a lack of hierarchy and a lack of domestique. So Jorgensen and Benoit, they'll just wait. Trek are blocking with about 5 90-kilo riders. Decathlon have Bissiger and Narsen, same level on the hierarchy. Bora, they have Mayus there. Pithy, the Van Dykes, they're not going to pull for him. UAE, Bjerg, Vermeersch, Pollitt, none pull. I know they don't have a sprinter, but they're all the same level in the hierarchy, and this is their chance without Pogacar. So there's all these teams, and still, like, Quickstep should be pulling, man. I don't understand it, like, how it's just Fabio, and it's no surprise, all due respect, but if Fabian van den Bosch is just pulling 1v1 against Pedersen, he's going to lose time. And I'm like, why don't you help Alpecin here?
Well, is Fabio van den Bosch the new Urukai of Alpecin? Because I didn't necessarily expect him to be in that final the way he was.
He looked like Groves. I think it was Caden Groves. It was Caden Groves.
They showed up with Caden Groves instead of Fabio, you're saying?
Yeah.
They replaced him before the race. Oh, okay. That's possible.
Or during, I don't know.
in a random bush, there's Fabio van den Bosch being pushed out by Groves. Nonetheless, on a serious note, I do want to add, with Decathlon, it's not even Nassen and Bisker alone. You know who was there? Sam Bennett.
No way.
And they weren't riding. Yes, why?
So it's like they all want to keep their domestiques for after the camel, or they just don't want to work. And I'm like, well, okay, but they're going to be fucked after the camel. And that's what happens. Camelberg, Pedersen has like 2 minutes, and he just loses time for the rest of the race. But there's domestiques that are cooked. And Intermarché last year, when Pedersen won by 10 seconds, they had 5 riders. They didn't put one to pace. They got Jonas Ruch or someone here they don't pace. Campenaerts gets caught with Haller. And then Visma don't pace. Quickstep put 1 rider. They're saving Bert van Leeuwenberger for a lead out. And I agree with... And sorry, we should give more credit then. Mads Pedersen, monster ride today. He didn't really slow down. He did what the Van der Poels and Pogacars of the world have been doing, and he wins this solo with a 56k solo. It was practically a 60k, 70k solo, really, because no one was helping him from the Ploegstraat. And he wins Gent-Wevelgem to give Trek the classics return they have, where they win one big classic a year, and he's been firing in these classics.
And it's also like, it's not just that he won. Like, simplistically, he was probably the favorite before the race started, but that doesn't explain what happened in the race. Little Trek was the one that blew open the race in the first echelon segment. Pedersen was already doing that himself. There was a moment in that first echelon segment that Pedersen rode off the front with 3 others because he was so eager to get away. He was trying a 170-kilometer solo at that point. Then on the first parts of the hill zone, it's also Pedersen. Before the hill zone, in the second echelon part, it's also Little Trek and Pedersen. There's so much that Pedersen did in this race. And by the end of the race, I'm sorry, but, well, it's super deserved for Little Trek to win this race. Either way, whether it was Pedersen that way or Milan from the peloton after Pedersen was staying ahead, they were in the perfect situation. You've got your guy that has the engine, that also has a bit of a sprint on paper, even though this year it hasn't come out necessarily, is up the road. And in the peloton, you've got multiple domestiques with Milan just sitting in and waiting in case he gets caught. And he doesn't get caught. And at the end of the day, they claimed this race from the start to finish, and very deserving. Does it change my opinion on Pedersen for RVV? No, not at all. But Roubaix, I always considered him a competitor.
Yeah, Roubaix is looking really, really good. Also because he didn't get tired. You know, he's done so much work. He's accelerated multiple times. He's done Kemmelberg, which are accelerations 3 times. And no one's pretty much helping him for 70Ks, and he didn't really get tired. So it does go to show, though, they closed about 25, 30 seconds in the last 3-4 Ks when the lead-out started to push. So it does go to show. I still don't think they'll call it. You can talk about maybe coordination post last Kemmelberg. Then they weren't going to catch him. So whatever they did, even if they were organized.
The issue is that they never tried for me, those teams. And I got to correct one thing. I said Bennett was there. Commentator said Bennett was there. He's DNF, so I severely doubt he was there.
Yeah, it's just it was Sander de Pestel. It's just like, I guess if you're decathlon without Bennett, you know, if you're EF with Mikkels against Milan and Merlier, you're gonna. I agree. It's a loser mentality.
Yeah,
to not pull. I agree. So Pedersen wins ahead of Merlier. That was a fantastic sprint for second. Both very strong. Milan third. Christoph still got the old dog. Still got it in him fourth behind those. You know, the top guys. Hofstetter fifth. Israel will take those. Hofstetter, he loves a top result in the bunch sprint behind in a classic. Ballerini sixth. Astana will be laughing. 175 UCI points. He was active too. Ballerini was attacking, man. He was not just following all day. Ballerini was attacking that group. Binny seventh. Berkmo's what the fuck? Berkmo's eighth.
That man can cook.
Yeah, but how has he done that? Jordi Meus ninth. Lorenz Rex 10th. So Wanty, I think we're going for points, frankly. And yeah, that's Gent-Wevelgem men. So
yes.
Yeah, I think Pedersen looks good. I think Roubaix is going to be good. Except we just got news. Olav Koy broke his collarbone, so he's out for Roubaix. And but Trek is a block. The Trek v Alpecin battle is going to be unbelievable in Roubaix.
Yeah, also when it comes to Koy, is that Scheldeprijs is before Roubaix, right? So it's probably out for that as well, I'm guessing.
We're doing it.
Really? We've got a sprinter skipping this Scheldeprijs these days.
Mate, the Panna was unbelievable.
Yeah, that is very true. Anyway, you were saying Little Trek versus Alpecin, that's going to be major, but it's also more than that. Like, I've got confidence that Ineos is also going to be interesting in Paris-Roubaix. Like in RVV, I'm more thinking, okay, they're probably going to have to anticipate in RVV to matter, Ineos. But when it comes to Roubaix, not necessarily, but also they've got the riders to do so in the first place. So I think it's a combination of both. So I'm liking that battle a lot. I'm also not completely writing off Wout van Aert for Roubaix. I will never do that, because that's the one race where I do see him being competitive. RVV, I don't. Who else do we have on the list for Roubaix?
I think you're right. Doing a Roubaix preview. Ineos look good. Ben Turner is back to. I mean, there's no result here, but Ben Turner was good again. He's good in E3. Ben Turner's back in really good shape in the classics, like he was a couple of years ago. And yeah, I think Tarling, he just can't do the hills. He just cannot explode up the hills. He needs a flat race. So, Ganna would have been with Pedersen today.
I do feel like we've seen a better Binyam in the classics than the last couple of years in terms of his performance. But I think that, for example, in E3, we see him going to the front of a second peloton and closing the gap to a front peloton himself on a random hill. That is so much wasted energy. I think he just needs to ride a bit more conservative in places and being there at the right moment, because that's where he then misses out.
But I think Rex has a free roll.
Yes, I don't think that should be the case outside of Roubaix.
Probably not. So yeah, that was men's Gent-Wevelgem. Women's Gent-Wevelgem, Apparently, there was a big crash in the Mura, and we see an ambulance there, like 2 bikes in the pond. Luckily, no riders went in. Few abandons
The
from
pond.
yeah,
Gracht or lake?
In the Kracht.
Gracht with a G,
Glenhoven
my friend.
abandons, and then we see, but they're not the same crosswind splits as in the men's race. So I don't know if the wind stopped. When coverage started, we do see SD Works trying to split it. They got Vibes here, Kopecky, Bredevold, Madalach, full classic strong team. And ELB had crashed. There was blood on her knee. Had she returned when coverage started, Benji?
I think she had returned or was on the way of returning, but we saw a crash immediately after that anyway. So like you said it, there was a crash that initially caused all the damage, but then there was also another crash that came later where there was a Phoenix rider that avoided crashing, saved herself, but the effect of someone saving herself in the middle of the peloton causes others to break, which then causes a crash. And it was a bit of an odd situation. We then see like the aftermath of riders on the floor getting up, and Olivia Baril, she angrily gets up. She wants to take her bike, pushes someone else's feet out of the way, like angrily projecting her anger on that rider, taking the bike. I didn't like that. I won't lie, I did not like that. But
Baril can't ride in the peloton.
And the other rider fell over her.
Yeah, in Sanremo the same. She was riding the back the whole time, and I was like, crash coming, and she crashed. So maybe it's just coincidence, maybe not.
Camelberg numero uno is coming, my friend. Like you said it, no major splits as a cause of echelons, but these climbs could do it. And we see Lotte Kopecky in the World Champ jersey coming to the front and smashing this climb. And this is the Belvedere side. The Belvedere side, in my opinion, is the more enjoyable side. It's a longer one. It's less steep. But we see Kopecky smash there, and she creates a group there where Wiebes is present, Bredewold is present, and there's lots of other riders in the group, like 8 to 10 riders, but at the end of the day, if Bredewold, Kopecky, and Wiebes are there, it's SD Works that is going to decide whether that move works or not, and they do ride a little bit, but it's also not, they're not going all out because they know that whether this group makes it to the line or a larger group gets it to the line, Wiebes is always the favorite regardless. And in the back, we see ELB, who missed the move, pulling an entire group back single-handedly to this wheel. So very strong ride there. Is ELB this year the Ciclismo of women's cycling?
ELB is doing a one-woman battle a lot of these races. Like her feet, she pulled a solo echelon just about for a 120k solo to win GC. Then one on her feet. In the classics, like in Sanremo, she's the one who would have won fighting off SD Works after the Poggio descent. So yeah, ELB, she's in good shape, but the race just wasn't hard enough today. Maybe not enough wind or bad weather. And SD Works, they're not going to, Kopecky's not going to ride, or Bredevold's not going to ride all out with riders not pulling in the wheel, which Trek were there. So Trek with Henderson there. So they're just like, oh well, we can just wait because we've got Vivas. They wait, attack start, lots of attack start rolling. There is a group, and SD Works' strategy is just to put Bredevold in these moves. So they always put Bredevold in and then let the other teams cannibalize themselves. It's been their strategy for a few years, and it works 99% of the time. Also because Bredevold would win from that group. When there was the group of Bredevold, Manley, Jaskulska, Brand, Korval, and Dijkstra. Crash of Cicchini, crash of Kat Ferguson. Unfortunately, she just, when there was the group moved over to the gutter and some wind, she overlapped wheels, she crashed and was out of the race. So it would have been a shame. I was keen to see what she could do on the last Kemmelberg. And it all stops Benji, pretty much.
Yeah, it all stops the group.
There's 3 groups. There's like group 1 of about 25, 30. Group 2 of maybe another 20 with some treks. That comes back. And then there's group 3, which we never see, with like literally the rest of the peloton.
Yeah,
we didn't see for that time.
True. Now, I do feel like we need to credit Little Trek for trying and rolling attacks in this zone, because that was the team that was Lucinda Brandt, Ellen van Dijk. Every single second we saw a Little Trek rider trying to make those moves, like the one you just mentioned with Jaskulska, Manderley, and Bredewold. That got closed by FDJ Suez on the Banneberg, for example, which is, it's kind of sad because you'd want FDJ Suez to be present in that group and not closing it, because otherwise those groups don't actually put any pressure on SD Works, who is also present in that group. So the effect just never works if not every team is present. Because in this race, let's be real, we saw it in Brugge de Panne, 95% of these teams are not actually actively trying to get ahead of SD-Works in this race. And that is very sad for a race where Lorena Wiebes is 99% of the chance going to win the sprint at the end of the day. And we do get to the second Camelberg. We once again see Kopecky smashing, Shabby, Longoborghini, and Wiebes in the wheel. So Wiebes, we've been highlighting for 2 years now that she's become more versatile and more versatile. She's at peak versatility, in my opinion, at this point. And we get into the descent of that Camelberg, and is it me or did Elise Shabby, who was in that group, crash? Because suddenly she was gone.
Yeah, she must have. I mean, I'm trying to see where she finished. She finishes in the main group, but she was literally right there, and there's no way you crack that badly that you're not in like group 2. So I didn't understand what was happening there. But yeah, this is why SD Works also could have won this race in multiple ways. They could have, with this group of ELB, Borghese, Dygert, Kopecky after last Camelberg. With Wiebes, they could have just rolled or countered from it. Kopecky could have gone solo here and probably won. You know, like she really could have gone solo here. She was very focused on Wiebes' sprint. Even Wiebes' attacks at one point to punish Dygert and co for not working. Probably they should have worked, actually, because they don't have a sprinter. Like, make it a smaller group, and then maybe you can attack at the end if SD Works have helped block behind. In the end, it doesn't happen. The main group comes back. No one attacks. Literally nobody.
Volker Wessels.
Or before then, though. Before Volker Wessels, there was like the main peloton of, say, another 60 riders hadn't returned. It was a group of 30, 40, and Trek had their whole team. And they line up, single file, and they just ride tempo for Balsama. I'm like, don't give up just now. Like, SD Works didn't have Lach back. They didn't have all their numbers yet. We saw in De Panne, Balsamo, she can't hold a candle to Wiebes' sprint right now. It's not close. So you have to keep attacking.
It's true, and that's the sad part here, because, like you say, in that first moment, there's no attacks while the SD Works force is not back. Obviously, the SD Works force comes back, and then we do see one attack of a duo of Volker Wessels. I think it included Eline Janssen and someone else, and they will go off the front for like 2 seconds, because then, obviously, SD Works has the strength to close it, but it wasn't just SD Works. Other teams were helping close them as well. Little Trek was also helping close them. So, like, at that point, it looks like every single team in the peloton except Volker Wessels was like, okay, we're just going to ride to the end. We're going to ride to the finish like lambs to a slaughter. Because at the end of the day, Elisa Balsamo loses 97% of the sprint she does against Wiebes. And the ones she does win is either she very rarely is the better rider in the race, very rarely, which almost never happens, or Wiebes has a mechanical, which has happened, for example, at the Tour de France last year when Charlotte Kool won a stage at the Tour de France. And, like, Kool, how many times out of 100 sprints is Kool going to beat Wiebes? I'm saying 10, maybe?
Kool I'll allow. But even then, Georgie probably should have attacked. Like, they very quickly go, Charlotte Kool is our... It's like, okay, but she can still sprint. She also made the smaller group. Like, Kool made the smaller group, and Georgie wasn't riding nor attacking. And I'm like, well, now... The only chance maybe is that Kopecky has to do a lead out from 650. Wiebes opens up way early. Cole's not had to fight anyone for the wheel. Then you increase your chances. But yeah, for Trek, I don't really get it. But even, like there's so many teams. There's so many teams like EF, Visma, whoever. They got multiple riders. They're just following. And by 10K to go, it's too late. Because SD Works then have like 7 riders. They put Martelak on the front to ride at 55 k's an hour, and then you can't attack anymore.
Yep, and that's low key how it happened. Then we go into the last kilometer. We see the SD Works team keeping everything together from that point in the last 10 kilometers, and in the last K, with 1.4 kilometers to go, there's this moment, and you gotta look at it because it's really impressive, where Kopecky and Wiebes are basically trying the last 2.5k to get into a good position. They've decided that Kopecky's the pilot, that they're not going to use a full-on lead-out, that Kopecky's going to lead out Wiebes. We see that scenario happening. Kopecky is very aware of where Wiebes is around her, always looking around a little bit to know, okay, she's right there, I got to keep that in mind. At a certain point, they move to the right side of the road, and Kopecky says to Wiebes, come on, we're hopping through this gap. Gap didn't even exist yet. when it felt like that happened. And with about 1.4 kilometers to go, she goes through that gap, goes around on the right side of the road, moves to the left, and is at the front of the peloton. And yes, Kopecky's in the wind, which might cost her lead out, because when we continue, we enter the last kilometer, Kopecky starts her lead out by ramping it up, kind of like how Wellens does a lead out for Pogacar on Santi Marie. That's how Kopecky did a lead out for Wiebes in this last kilometer. And I gotta say, she had to do an early lead out in this race, which comes at a little bit of a cost, I felt like, because she was struggling with 400 meters to go. Eventually, she brings it to, I guess, 250, roughly, maybe 200, but that's probably a stretch. And on her left side, who was it doing the lead out on the left side?
Jesus, I don't know. They all got boxed in. I only looked at Wiebes and I turned my TV off. I saw she wasn't boxed in and I turned it off. But yeah, it was just a huge fight for her wheel, which even costs more energy. And yeah, like Balsamo eventually gets it. She can't do anything. She's stuck in the wheel. And yeah, Cole and her are stuck in the wheel. Wiebes wins, Balsamo second, Cole third. It might have been Arkea or Human Powered Health for Lily Williams, you were mentioning, Benji, on the left side. Yep. Van Geloof, Marjolein Van Geloof fourth, Consoni fifth, Gillespie sixth.
You tried.
I tried. Williams. She's in a classic, I guess. Lily Williams. Seventh. Wollaston eighth. Verhulst ninth. And Kaya Reisch, the Polish rider, 10th.
Well then, Wiebes was the favorite before the race started. At the end of the day, she wins. Was there something other teams could have done differently? Yes. SD Works played it perfectly though. And that's most of the stuff I can say when it comes to this race, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'd like my time back. I'd like a refund. This was a horrible watch.
It was tough. I do think, though, I mean, we can be like, this team should have done that. This team should have done that. I still think SD Works winning is the most likely outcome here.
It doesn't mean the other team shouldn't try, in my opinion.
It doesn't. And you also see that Elisa Longo-Borghini not being on Little Trek really is tough for both them and her. They miss the big attacking option, and she misses the strength in team behind or with her at the moment for UAE. So that's also a change. But yeah, we have Dwars Duel of Vlaanderen on Wednesday for the women. That's a dot pro race, not a world tour race. I'm not sure which of them will be doing it, of the stars. And then, of course, RVV. Anything change your mind for RVV? Surely, because Kopecky here was very passive.
Yeah.
Like, Kopecky decided she was going to ride for Wiebes for the sprint from first Kemmelberg.
And the difference is going to be that Kopecky is going to probably get the complete freedom in RVV with the option that Wiebes might be nearby after her if they need to, in the race, make a decision differently. If, for example, Kopecky isn't feeling that good, which I severely doubt looking at the way she's riding, then she could say, okay, I've got Wiebes behind, I'm not going to ride in this group, stuff like that. That is possible because Wiebes' versatility is really good. And to be honest, at this point, nothing surprises me when it comes to Wiebes. She's really impressive. Best sprinter in the world. I think this was her 100th victory in total in her career. So congrats to that. And I think that's all I can say about this race, to be honest. The only thing left to talk about is El Catalunya, which is the Volta a Catalunya.
Oh,
we haven't spoken.
Do that tomorrow.
We're going to do that tomorrow. You're muffling me.
You want to do it?
I'm being muffled. Now we're doing it tomorrow. You said it. I'm
do
being
it tomorrow.
muffled.
Save it for the weekly show. Yeah, teaser.
I'm going to go eat some barbecue. Ooh la 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 la.
Yeah. But yeah, that was Gent-Wevelgem. We've got a few classics obviously left. The two big cobbled monuments coming up. But indeed, Trek made a statement today in the men's, and SD Works reaffirmed their authority in the women's race in Gent-Wevelgem in Flanders Fields. So yeah, I would say we're on to next week, but we'll maybe dive into it a bit more. We'll have this week coming up, weekly show tomorrow or Tuesday, and then we'll have obviously the Tour of Flanders preview Wednesday, Thursday, based on when the start lists come out. Both races are on the Sunday. And then, yeah, that'll be our schedule. There's no World Tour racing this week apart from Dwars Duel of Vlaanderen on the Wednesday for the men. So that's our schedule. Alrighty. Thanks for listening as always. Until our weekly show tomorrow. Ciao, ciao.